Hey there, everyone.
Hi.
Hey, you guys are cracking us up. We had more views on the video about sex from last week than we've had any other week. Not surprising, but nonetheless funny to us. So thanks for tuning into that. And we're not going to be talking about that today. What we're going to be talking about is why is it so hard to ask for help, and why is asking for help so important in our marriages? Mike and I, as we've discussed this, we've kind of narrowed it down to two reasons why asking for help is so hard, and they are hopelessness and pride. And everything seems to fall within those two categories. Marriage is hard. We all know that. It can be really difficult, and our brokenness can create quite a mess, and we can create a web of just tangled, yucky feelings of brokenness that we don't even know how to unwind. And sometimes we find that we don't want to unwind that. We don't want things to get better. We don't want to like our spouse. We don't want our marriage to work. We want out, and we don't want people in on that. It can feel really hard. It can prick our pride, and we don't feel like there's any hope anyway, so why even try? Letting people into your marriage is really vulnerable, and letting it all out there. Why we're broken, why we're struggling, why it's messy. It can feel really ugly and really hard to be vulnerable in that way. But the truth is that we need people. We need people in our life who will come alongside of us and who will give us perspective. So we just want to talk a little bit about that.
You know, in our marriage, there's been a lot of times where I haven't wanted to let anybody into what's going on. And as Jackie mentioned, it's usually hopelessness and pride. The bigger one for me is pride. I have not wanted to let people in because I have not wanted to have anyone tell me that I was doing stuff wrong. It was real easy for me to just kind of hold on to the fact that it was Jackie's fault that we were struggling, and that if she would get it together, our marriage would be just fine. And I knew that if I were to ask people for help, that I wouldn't be able to hold on to that illusion. It would mean that I would have to let go of some of that and allow a space for me to actually do the work that I needed to do. And that wasn't always something that I was willing to do or wanted to do. We were really fortunate that we had put ourselves in a position where we had a whole lot of people that were willing to butt in whether we really wanted them to or not. And Jackie's always been really good about throwing stuff out there whether I wanted to or not. So just being in a place where we had other people that would step in and say, okay, this is what needs to be addressed. And if you've spent any time with us talking about marriage, you've heard us talk about some of this. But we've had some good friends that would come along, and I would go to my buddy and I'd sit down and I'd start telling him all the things that Jackie was doing wrong. And he'd look at me and say, I don't care what you do. And I'd go, no, you need to understand this. You need to understand what's going on. And he'd say, I don't care. What did you do? I'd say, I'll tell you what I did, but you need to understand what she did so that you can understand what I did. And he'd say, I don't care. Tell me what you did so that we can figure out what you need to do. And there were times when it was utterly frustrating because I really believed I was in the right and wanted to be right. And that was more important to me than the marriage at the time. Just being right was so significant to me. So to have somebody that was willing to step in the middle of that with me and just go, it's not about you being right. It's about what your marriage needs and figuring out what's really going on. And so we both had people in our lives that were willing to do that with us, and we were really blessed to have that. But again, in order to actually accept any of that, we had to push through a lot of our pride. And the other piece that she mentioned was hopelessness. And there was times where we have felt like there was no way we could make this marriage work. We felt like we were so far down this path that coming back was impossible. And honestly, that's why we started doing these videos. It's why we work with couples, because it's not because we feel like we've got it all together. It's because we felt like things were so far gone, and we know that there's hope. We know that in Christ there's hope for our marriages if we'll allow it. And so we've been blessed to have people that stepped alongside us and said, listen, there's truth that you're not seeing, and let us help you gather a different perspective and help you understand what your marriage can be. And that's why we're interested in marriage, in other people's marriage, and jumping in the middle of stuff, because when you're hopeless, it is so hard to see any other perspective other than the hopelessness. When you're in what feels like a bottomless pit, all you see is darkness. So to have somebody else jump in with a flashlight and go, no, there's stuff around here, take a look, has been huge for us.
We needed people to have hope for our marriage when we didn't have hope for ourselves, and sometimes I wasn't even sure if I wanted hope for our marriage. It was just so hard. And I feel like a lot of times it was embarrassing to go and share crap and ask for help. And I feel like that's something that holds couples back from putting things out there, is that it's embarrassing. And we don't want to share because it sheds a light on where we've gone wrong and where our thinking is wrong, and where we're unwilling to be gracious and forgiving and accepting of our spouse, which is so crucially important. And like Micah said, we wouldn't be where we're at without the help of people coming into the messy with us, and that required us to be vulnerable. And I'll be the first to admit that I went and shared a bunch of our marriage stuff and all of our brokenness out of a selfishness in me, to shed light on what he's doing wrong, for somebody to deal with him, for somebody to make him better so that our marriage could be better. And what came back to me was that I had to look at myself first. But that wasn't the intent that I went into getting help for. And so having people that were surrounding us that wouldn't let us off the hook was crucial for us, and who kept bringing it back around to, what do you need to change? What do you need to do? And where is Christ in the midst of this? And that was part of the flashlight, as Mike said, that people were shining, was Christ's faithfulness in the midst of all of this, and Christ's design for marriage. There's always hope. And Mike and I believe that with all of our being, that there is hope for every marriage. And if there's any way that we can be a beacon of that hope, that's our passion and our desire for coming alongside of marriage. So if you find yourself in that place, you feel desperate, you feel hopeless, you know your pride is out in the forefront, but you're not sure how to overcome that, we just really encourage you to be vulnerable and to tell somebody that you trust that you're struggling, and ask for that help, even though you have no idea how God or anybody else could unwind this crazy mess that's been created. You don't have to have all the answers. Just take one step. And the first step is, we need help. And we're struggling, and we're giving this to you to jump in the middle of it with us. And I promise you that God will show you one step at a time His plan for your marriage, for marriage in general. And I promise He will show you healing and restoration. And I promise that if you allow it, you'll draw closer to the Lord in the midst of all of it as well.
And as you're looking for people to help you, don't look for the people that are just going to agree with you. Mm-hmm. Don't look for your buddy that also thinks that marriage is super hard and doesn't want to see the hope in it. Look for those people that have been through the struggles, that have come out on the other side and are willing to walk that path with you. Mm-hmm. There are plenty of people that'll sit there and tell you, you're right, this is too hard, you don't deserve this, you should be able to do whatever you want, get out. It is so worth the fight, it is worth the struggle, it is worth coming through. one of the things that holds true in our lives is the things that are most beautiful are the ones that we struggle for. The lessons we learn, they come at a cost. We have to fight for them. We rarely learn things when things are good. We learn things through the difficulties. So embrace that. Most of us aren't going to seek difficulties, but when they're there, let's look for the opportunities to learn from them. As we move ahead in these next few weeks, we really want to know if there are things that you guys want to hear about specifically. So if there are, feel free to either leave something in the comments or to shoot us an email at couplesupport@westwoodcc.org, and we'll address those. We'll keep you anonymous, but if you've got specific issues you'd like us to touch on, I think we've established right at this point we're ready and willing to talk about pretty much anything in our marriage. So if there's stuff that you have questions about or would just like us to talk about further, please let us know that in one of those two areas. And we hope that this is a time where you're thriving, but if it's not, please reach out to somebody. So
Take care.
have a good